Okay, let's get into this this for today. So there's a lot to cover here when it comes to Joe Robe, but Joe Robe is a large TikToker. He actually has 2 accounts. This has 4.5 million. This is his alt account at 1.3 million, where he's verified. Now, there's a lot of backstory here, and the reason it needs to be brought up is because it is incredibly relevant to the current situation. But I was in bed last night and I got reached out to by a couple of TikTokers, large TikTokers, smaller TikTokers, and they had asked me to join a Zoom call over allegations of Joe Robe grooming people. Now, you guys know that I take that word very seriously, and I don't like to just move forward with these things unless I have a pretty, unless I'm sure. I got into the call and it was incredibly credible. Grooming and rape apology is absolutely what I would describe this as. But before we get into that, I have to give you guys some backstory here because it is very, very, very relevant to the situation. So, Joe Robe and I were people who grew up on the app together, you could say. We started over the summer. We both blew up over the summer. I blew up for my more, I would usually counter what I would call toxic progressivism, and I made jokes, and it wasn't my shining example, but I also had some pretty good political commentary. Joe Robe leaned very much more heavily onto the politically correct side, always calling out people he thought was inappropriate. Going honestly, I would say now definitely virtue signaling over very minor issues. Like for instance, there's a video where he gets upset that somebody edited the Sam from iCarly, Jeanette McCurdy, as being fat, and he would have, obviously people know him for his big interaction with that vegan teacher. What is this?
No, I sound a little bit ridiculous saying this, but we need to have a serious conversation about Trisha Paytas.
Yeah, we need to have a serious conversation about Joe Robe. Anyway, this all really came to a head last year when his friend Calvin Brandy, which I have a YouTube video about right here, admittedly sexually assaulted Joe Robe's other friend, this girl named Erin. Now, they were friends to a point where they all hung out in public, which, to be honest with you, is kind of weird because he's 27 and they're like 20. But whatever. They hung out in public. Now, what had happened is after it came out that he had done this, and he admitted to it and said he was going to step away, and then he ended up plugging shoes in this video as he walked away. What was very suspicious is that Joe Robe didn't talk about it at all. For somebody who had platformed himself off of commentaries, social commentary and call-out content for predatory individuals. And what was even more suspicious is the fact that he left pictures with him up on Instagram. Now, to me, that very heavily suggests the rape apologist type mentality. And this is when we talk about sexual assault culture, this is what we talk about. We talk about not going after your friends because they're your friends, even if they're predators. It's honestly one of the biggest issues. And of course, Joe Robe, despite the fact that he is a self-proclaimed feminist, is also a rape apologist. Now, not to jump ahead too much, but as I was having a conversation with these people on the Zoom call yesterday, they had mentioned some very, very questionable comments from Joe Robe. So, for instance, what they had told me was something to the effect that when Calvin Brandy got deplatformed for sexually assaulting Erin, let's just put, right here, when he got deplatformed, he was saying something along the lines of like, oh, what do I have to live for? In a way of potentially threatening Erin. And Joe Robe's response to that was, well, can you blame him? He just lost his platform. And I want you guys to really let that sink in, how this young girl was sexually assaulted. The aggressor was upset that he lost his platform, and Joe Robe empathized with the aggressor and not with his friend, not with the woman who was sexually assaulted. That's rape apology. And it's disgusting, to be absolutely honest with you. And it's very relevant because moving forward, there was a situation with Gemini Official. Now, I have lots of videos on Gemini Official. It's a big deal type of a scenario. But with Gemini Official, This is somebody who's 19 years old and slept with a 15-year-old, which isn't even the worst of it. He sexually assaulted a drunk TikToker at a TikTok party and left her bruised. He got kicked out of his school for sexual battery. He registered himself as a minor on a pseudo dating app called Yubo so he could talk to other minors. This is a person that's a methodical predator. And Joe Robe didn't talk about it, and nobody really batted an eye. Of course, until it turned out that Joe Robe's mods on his Discord leaked to me that he was talking about how it wasn't a big deal that I was going after Gemini. Anybody could do it. Who cares? He completely downplayed the situation that I was engaged in, and other big TikTokers as well, that were trying to do the right thing as we were getting systematically banned and suppressed. And that's where it got very frustrating. And the reason that this is relevant is because not only do we need a glimpse into the mentality and the mind of this worthless pile of shit, Joe Robe, but we also need to understand that this individual, 27 years old, possibly 26 at the time, thought that it was appropriate to dump all of his trauma onto a 16-year-old girl in private. And that's difficult to communicate to you guys how horrible that is for a grown person to dump their trauma onto a 16-year-old. The trauma being his frustrations with me, but him also conveniently, after being called out for invalidating people trying to deplatform a predator, him talking about his own molestation when he was, like, I believe 8 years old. And he dumped that molestation onto a 16-year-old girl before coming public with it. As a 27-year-old man, it's just completely unacceptable. It's too much. That is far too much emotional stress for a young child to have to deal with. And you know what? Like, I'm just going to be absolutely honest with you. I'm sure Joe Robe was molested, and that's terrible. But he used that as a manipulation tactic to downplay the fact that he didn't care that Gemini was a predator. He timed it. He timed the release of that information right when he got called out for invalidating the struggles of people trying to deplatform a real predator. And he came out with this. But what's worse is that not only did he come out with his saying that he was molested, but he also had name dropped that girl, Erin, who was sexually assaulted by Calvin Brandy. And his original narrative was, I'm not going to talk about it because this girl isn't ready for it. So really, he just played this whole manipulative, very shallowly manipulative game to not have to take any accountability for being a worthless, shitty content creator. And this is all relevant because this all builds up into this. This is a Google document here. Now, I was in a Zoom call, I said last night, with a bunch of people. I am not going to drop their names. You're going to see some of the names are in here. I'm not going to drop their TikToks. I have that information for myself. And, you know, the biggest reason is these are younger people. Most of which are of 18 now. But there's something on TikTok I want you guys to understand is that I see a lot of young people on TikTok always talking about their stresses and their traumas and what happened in their life. And a lot of it's very serious and charged. And it's of my opinion that could potentially, that trauma, expressing that trauma for the whole world to see and for it to be cataloged forever is something that I feel that in even 5 years it could potentially add to the trauma of these individuals. And so I don't want to go around and like rampantly name dropping everybody and saying this person's involved, this person's involved. I am more than comfortable with leveraging the reputability of my platform more than anything else, because I think that should be enough. I have information in private. So that's just how it's going to happen. And so if you don't think that I'm trustworthy, then, you know, that's fine. You can go away. You can fuck off, you know. And I'm half joking, but like, this is a very serious thing to me. I'm more concerned with the mentality of these people and like them moving forward and maturing as individuals and not having to have this cataloged situation going on. That being said, we're gonna go through this. We're gonna go through this little Google document that they had sent me, and I want you guys to understand. I was on Zoom with them for an hour going through this information, and I asked questions that were very deep, and I got answers that I was surprised with getting. I don't clock these people as like these really manipulative kids who knew exactly what to say. They didn't even realize how honestly bad this whole situation was while we were talking. So anyway. Let's right off the bat. So, Joe Robe made a Zoom group of 15 to 19-year-olds to take a BDSM test and share the results with him. Yeah, So Joe Robe, if you guys see, we could just do this. Let's just very quickly show you that Joe Robe is a 27-year-old man. Maybe he was 26, but pretty sure he was 27 at this point. 27-year-old man in a Zoom call with 15 to 19-year-olds, asking them to take BDSM tests. Now, I am a 31-year-old man, and I'm going to tell you that I have nothing in common with 15-year-olds, 16-year-olds, 17-year-olds, 18, 19, 20, even upwards of like 25. I have very little in common. So I find it questionable that you would even associate yourself with 15-year-olds. Now, I understand the nature of Discord, and like a lot of times the mods for Discords are younger people, and I have those mods as well. But I'm going to tell you one thing. I've never pulled them into a Zoom call and asked them to take a fetish test, ever. In fact, I limit my engagements with a lot of people solely because I'm uncomfortable with the interaction and the dynamic in general. And hopefully that doesn't offend any of my Discord mods. But, like, you know, I'm 30. It's inappropriate to really even be super friendly with people, let alone asking for a fucking BDM test. Tried to lure minors into houses. Now, this one's very interesting. This one says Airbnb with Dylan, and when he was hesitant, he tried to get Noah to come with. Now, here's the backstory. This person, Dylan, was 17 years old, and 4 to 6 months before he turned 18, Joe Robe was pressuring him to have a one-on-one birthday party at a B&B on the day of his 18th birthday. That's grooming. That is trying to get somebody ready to fuck them. And as we go through here, you're going to find that on multiple occasions, Joe Robe also drove wedges between the friend group that involved this Dylan individual, which is also part of textbook grooming. You need to understand, driving a wedge, creating an emotional or physical dependence onto yourself, that's grooming. He was trying to fuck a 17-year-old right when they turned 18. He was priming them to have sex with them. And he was also driving a wedge to the point where this person told me that he wasn't friends with any of his TikTok friends for 4 months because Joe Robe told him that Joe Robe was his only real friend and he couldn't trust anybody. Lied about making hype houses to keep kids interested. He was just talking about making a hype house for these young people to join, which to me suggests leveraging his platform as a large content creator to keep people interested and saying, if you're my friend, I'll help you out. Keep in mind, this is a TikToker with 4.5 million followers on one account, 1.3 million on another account, verified by TikTok. Not surprised because they love verifying pedophiles. Although I don't know if I'd call this a pedophile scenario, but definitely a predator. TikTok just loves verifying predators. They're just really good at it. Always brought up hot tubs to minors. That's something that I told them to work on the Google Doc and organize it a little more. So he always brought up getting into hot tubs with minors. Well, that's not weird. Promised alcohol to minors. This is one of those things where he talked about, apparently he would constantly try to orchestrate parties where he said even if he would try to buy kids alcohol. Now, just to mention, the parties were really just him and a bunch of people under 20. And he's like, yeah, I'll get you alcohol. Now, that might sound, it doesn't even sound innocent on first glance, but understand that if a 27-year-old is trying to buy people under the age of 20 alcohol, I could only assume that he's trying to lower the inhibitions of these young people to talk to them in some capacity. Now, maybe that's just a drastic assumption, but I am coming from the perspective that I'm also a grown fucking man. What else would you do this for? You're going to organize a TikTok party. You're going to buy kids alcohol? For what? God only knows. Dylan's friend, the kid that we mentioned before, commented on an Instagram post, makes me want to come. Now, obviously, we know Dylan's friend is Dylan's age. And I know I was a stupid kid too. And I used to say dumb shit to my friends where I'd say, oh, you're making me horny to your other friends in your group. It's actually pretty normal to comment under your friend's Instagram like, haha, you nice dick, something stupid like that. And that's what he said. But of course, Joe Robe used that as an excuse to privately message Dylan and say that he wanted to make him come too. Right? Dylan's friend commented on Insta post, makes me want to come, LOL. And John told Dylan 3 separate occasions that he wanted to do the same. And one time he said it publicly in a Zoom call and it made people upset. Yeah, so Joe Robe used this stupid little like joking comment that Dylan made with his friend to try to actually to try to actually get Dylan to make him come. Yeah. By the way, my understanding was that Dylan's friend was also invited to the birthday party with Joe Robe and Dylan. But of course, Joe Robe made sure to ask, is he going to be 18 at the time as well? Because, you know, he has to make sure that he's legally protected. I want you guys to understand that it's almost worse that he wanted to wait for them to turn 18 before talking to him. Because that shows like a methodical, predatory interaction. See, if you talk to a 17-year-old as a 27-year-old, you're a disgusting fucking loser. But if you think it's appropriate, it's a little less worse because at the very least you're just an absolute moron. So I can give you that. But Joe Robe, no, Joe Robe knew. Joe Robe knew that there could be legal ramifications if he interacted with a 17-year-old. He knew it was wrong. He actively knew it was wrong based on these interactions, and so he wanted to make sure that they were 18 years old, of course, because that somehow exonerates him. Making sexual comments to minors, sexual jokes, innuendos. It's important to note, and I'm not sure if it's in here, that on Joe Robe's Snapchat, he had friends, to my understanding, ranging from 13 to 20 years old. Right? This is his Snapchat, John Bell Flute, right here. This is his Snapchat. And apparently, yeah, 13 to 20 years old. Now, I don't know why, and this is a private Snapchat. And I don't understand why you would have people like that on your Snapchat. Why do you need to have personal interactions with young people in general? You're 27 years old, and you have on your Snapchat, you have all these young people on here. Doesn't really add up to me. Doesn't really make any sense to me. Couldn't imagine doing it myself. I don't even understand what you have in common with somebody that's 13. Bribe the group chat into calling him hot. Yes, of course. See, that sounds like, what is he talking about? But of course, I asked what the context around this situation is. And so what had happened is he was in, I believe it was a Zoom call or some kind of a group chat, and somebody called him old. And Joe Robe got offended by being called old, said that he felt that he was the same on the inside as all the other people there, 15 to 20-year-olds, and basically held everybody ransom until they would compliment him about how he's not really that old. Now, I don't even understand. See, people call me old all the time, and I say, yeah, because I'm old. Not really an insult. It's just kind of the way it is. But Joe Robe getting called old, well, he feels like he's a youngster. So, of course, that's really upsetting to him. Because, you know, he wants to stay cool with the kids. This way they'll hang out with him in Airbnbs the day that they turn 18 years old. And this is what I'm talking about. He locked an intoxicated girl out of a Zoom call for calling him old and refusing to call him hot. That was, you know, that's all what this all centralized around. Tried to get Dylan and Riley to create an OnlyFans once he turned 18, and he'd set it up for him and subscribe. Now, I remember specifically under Calvin Brandy's post where he weirdly said, you should make an OnlyFans. He seemed to be pretty active about asking people to make OnlyFans, which is already inappropriate enough in and of itself. But of course, when you tell people who have not turned 18 yet that they should make an OnlyFans once they turn 18, yeah, we're really hitting that really good sweet spot of grooming the fuck out of kids. It's insane. Tried to convince Dylan that everybody in Zoom was talking about him and that he was his only real friend. This is part of the grooming. When people say the word grooming on TikTok, you guys, some people just throw it around. This is what real grooming is. Grooming isn't just trying to interact with young people. Grooming is physically. Grooming is trying to set them up to be dependent on you in some capacity. Driving a wedge between somebody's friends or family or parents, that's part of grooming. Setting up a dependency onto him. That's what grooming is. And we need to understand that as an adult, as a 27-year-old man, that you have an incredibly massive impact on the mind of a 17-year-old, especially, again, when you have 2 platforms with 4.5 million and 1.3 million verified by TikTok. You're seen as a celebrity. Now, we should all know by now that 1 million followers on TikTok means nothing, and you should understand that it's nothing. It means nothing to anybody. But this is the way that Joe Robe leveraged his platform to effectively guilt and shame people into interacting with him, because he was a celebrity after all, and that's something that they expressed. They were like, Papa Gut. They actually said my name, Dan, because I felt uncomfortable with them calling me Papa Gut in a Zoom call about grooming a 27-year-old. They were like, Dan, he was a big content creator, and he was a celebrity to us. We actually enjoyed his content. We were in a very similar sphere. And what's also interesting to note, this is something I hadn't mentioned, I had actually almost forgot this, is that the way that all of these individuals came together and shared their experiences with each other about being, we'll just say, predatorized in some capacity, was they all were mutuals that didn't really necessarily talk, but they were mutuals, and they made a video, a very vague video, about being groomed by a larger TikToker. And then all of them DM'd each other and said, oh, Joe Robe. That's how synonymous Joe Robe's name was with being incredibly inappropriate. Tried to convince Melina of the same thing. That's another girl. That's the girl that he trauma dumped onto. Tried to isolate minors. Split up the whole group in the process of separating people. This is, again, textbook grooming. Trauma dumped on Mel when she was 16 during the Papa Gut drama. Cried about his own experiences and weaponized them to lure her in. We had talked about this before, but when Joe Robe was getting shit, not just by me, but from the whole TikTok community for invalidating the struggles of people trying to deplatform Gemini, and invalidating the people who were predatorized actively by Gemini, he cried and talked about how he was molested when he was 8, privately to a 16-year-old as a 27-year-old, and then again publicly on TikTok. Now, I am always empathetic to allegations such as that, and I will say that I believe it happened, but it is very questionable that he would drop that information the second that he was getting a lot of heat for invalidating the struggles of victims. It's manipulation. It's using your own experiences to manipulate people and to garner more sympathy. And while I can be individually sympathetic towards Joe Robe for that, I can absolutely blast him for being a manipulative piece of shit. He has Dylan's address, apparently. Dylan had dropped it at one point. Stayed in a group chat full of minors, 13 and 17, and added many of them to start snapping them privately. He wanted to be chained and handcuffed to a bed. Super overly sexual, constantly sending bulge and dick pics shirtless throughout the day. Bragged about watching porn in the workplace to TikTokers. Yeah. Now, down here are a couple of screenshots. Now, it's important to know that Joe Robe did a lot of this over Snapchat because he knew most likely because he knew what he was doing was wrong and didn't want it cataloged. But these images are rather telling to me, right? This is images of a message in a group chat, not a group chat, excuse me, one-on-one. This is the person. This is Dylan, this kid that was 17-year-old at the time. You know, the one that Joe Robe wanted to fuck in an Airbnb, allegedly fuck, right? This is them talking. This is him talking to us. This is John Robert Bell. He's 27-year-old, maybe 26-year-old, talking to a 17-year-old. The fact that you have his number is already very questionable to me. Anyway, they were joking around, apparently, and John said, "You've been doxxed." And Dylan said, good, deal with it. So who else are we inviting? Now, of course, they're referencing the Airbnb party where Joe Robe is trying. This is, by the way, 4 months before the kid is going to turn 18 years old. This is them discussing the Airbnb. Not sure. It doesn't matter to me. Whoever you want. It's for your birthday, though. Haha. I'll see if Hannah's interested. Do you care about the location of the house? Honestly, would be fine. I'm not that picky. I feel closer with WV. I don't know who that is. The better. Or that's probably a state. Probably like across the country. Would you want something a little southern? It's warmer like California or Carolina or something. Look in the chat. in case we can't find any friends. Of course, in case we can't find any friends, guys. Just in case we can't find anybody, and this turns into a one-on-one engagement, which to me suggests that Joe Robe is trying to set up the idea that it would be a group event, only to hope that it wouldn't work out, and then he could be alone with an 18-year-old, a fresh 18-year-old. I like that one, and it's cheap. It's very cheap. It's like $100 cheaper than all the other places. And then we have lots of money to do fun things, but there would be only room for the two of us. Oh, okay. Very interesting. Yeah, that's true. Maybe with like 2 rooms. I just realized the ocean is going to be freezing, so we don't need to be near the beach, lol. For real, I forgot about that. But we're still getting a hot tub. Now, that's the extent of the screenshots that we have, of course. But that lends quite a bit of credibility to all these other allegations here. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm surprised. I knew that Joe Robe was a whiny little bitch, but I didn't think that he was. I didn't think he was Predator level. You know, all honesty, even I suppose I was manipulated into thinking that he really just stayed away from the Gemini situation because he was a little pussy that didn't like me. Excuse my language, but it turns out it's because he seems to have some kind of empathy towards predators. That's my current assumption. It's incredibly disgusting to do any of this, to talk to underage people, try to get them to give you BDSM tests, to trauma dump on a 16-year-old as a 26 or a 27-year-old. That's incredibly stressful for that 16-year-old girl. And she literally, like, there was a moment in there where the tears came to her eyes. This is very frustrating. They're very passionate about Joe Robe no longer being able to utilize his platform to try to harm children. We have somebody who is trying to methodically get 17-year-old boys. It's very centralized. It's very heavily around boys. He didn't seem to be too interested in the girls, even though he said that he was. He said that he was bisexual, and this isn't a criticism. Being gay is nothing wrong with that, but he's very heavily focused on young boys, waiting for them to turn 18 and trying to get them into a scenario where he could have sex with them. That's what it seems like. This is all. It's incredible. It's insane. Frankly, it's too much. It's disgusting. Sending bulges and dick pics and I have a seat. You know, I'm not going to say this is as bad as Gemini Official because that got to physical interactions and but from a manipulation perspective, it's right up there with Gemini Official. It's methodical. It's disgusting. It is literal grooming. It's literal grooming. It's leveraging his platform to try to get young people to talk to him. It's the emotional manipulation, trying to get people to be dependent on him in some capacity. It's vile and it's disgusting. And I can't fucking believe it. So what I'm going to do is I suppose what we could do here is we can reach out to Joe Robe on his Instagram. So let me pull up his Instagram here. And I'm going to message him, DM him on Instagram, which I have actually done before. See, Joe Robe was banned a while back, and I said, hey, Joe Robe, I know we're not friends, but I'm really sorry you got fucked over for your ban. Anything I could do to help? Of course, he ignored me. See, Joe Robe didn't like me very much. For whatever reason. Well, of course, we went back and forth, but he never wanted to make videos about me. He never wanted to give me the attention. Probably because I wasn't 18 years old, or 15, or 16, or 17. Let's see. Would you like to respond to the sweeping allegations of grooming, of you being a groomer and a rape apologist? There we go. Right on Instagram. If you guys want to find his Instagram and ask him the same question, all you have to do is go to his TikTok on your mobile app. Well, actually, you can hit this link tree here. Probably open this link tree that he has. What the fuck? Linked here. Oh, there you go. You can find his Instagram right here. Right here. Absolutely no problem. Be my guest. So I think that, yeah, it would be good if he didn't ignore all of these allegations, of course. And I'm fucking frankly, it's pathetic that he's not only do we have all these allegations of grooming, but he also is a rape apologist. Yeah, I'm not glossing over the fact that he sent his bulge pics to minors. No, I'm not. It's a good point. I suppose maybe I didn't talk about it enough. And the reason is because they didn't emphasize it too much when we talked about it. But yeah, really sitting back and actually thinking about it, and this is actually just my apologies to you guys. Yeah, no, that's absolutely disgusting. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to downplay that. More than anything else is that when we talked about it, they glossed over it, so I didn't think much of it. Maybe that actually had to do with the fact that they were frustrated by it, and it offended them worse than they were willing to admit or wanted to admit. But yeah, no, he would send shirtless pictures of his bulge and his dick pic to them on Snapchat, of course. I mean, there's no question that based on all these allegations that, I mean, this is textbook. This is grooming, rape apology, and actively soliciting. What I was told by them is that when he would send those pictures, they all kind of skirted it. They were like, oh, that's uncomfortable. And they tried to just ignore it. Because, again, these are young kids, 17, 18-year-olds. And you have a celebrity at 27, 26, 27, sending you dick pics. So, of course, it's hard to... The position that Joe Robe put them in is a position where they feel like, oh, if you say no, then what can he do? And a lot of times people believe, like, you know, as a large content creator, especially one that very clearly has no credibility and is a worthless scumbag, that he could leverage his platform to deplatform other people over it. It's disgusting.
Visual Aids just resubscribed for 6 months.
As a scumbag.
Papa 3 months until my child is due.
Take this. Thank you so much for the 6 months.
Frick Jorobe.
Yeah,
He a goofy.
Yeah, he's a goof. More than a goofy. You know, more than a fucking goofy. He's a fucking predator, bro. Can I review Daniel Larson? Oh, you're in luck. I already did. I'll have a video about Daniel Larson out on YouTube in the next day or so. Yeah, Joe Robe blocked me as well on TikTok. I never liked Joe Robe, which Nick Foster's son. Yeah, it's so funny that Joe Robe was so adamant about Nick Foster being taken down. You know, it really... You know, it is really interesting that Joe Robe would constantly give Nick Foster a lot of shit for his jokes that, frankly, are incredibly inappropriate. I don't like Nick Foster's jokes. And he knows that. We've become friendly, but I don't like his jokes, especially the sexual assault jokes. It's interesting.
Feminist.
Yeah, feminist. It's interesting that Joe Robe was so adamantly against those jokes, but then he literally is a rape apologist. So, like, you know, who's worse? The person who jokes about sexual assault or the person who invalidates? This is one of those things that I think is like really, it's really something that we need to understand. When a person in general is sexually assaulted, there are massive feelings of isolation. That individual was just violated in a way that is unexplainable. And the only thing that you have are your friends. And one of her closest friends, Joe Robe, not only wasn't there for her to talk to about the experience, but he also sided with the person who sexually assaulted her. There's no greater scumbag in the world. It's an incredible thing, and I think a lot of people who would watch this video aren't going to truly understand what that means unless you have a personal relationship with being violated in that way. And to those people that have been, I'm very sorry for your experience and what you had to go through. And I hope at the very least you had a real friend and not somebody like Joe Robe that would diminish your experience by still being friends with somebody who's a rapist. And to a lot of other people, especially young men out there, if your friend is a rapist, he's no longer a friend. You turn on a dime. It doesn't matter what they've ever done for you in a positive light. You absolutely never support somebody who is capable and willing of violating somebody in such a personal manner. And that's something that you need to hold on to because you don't want or need friends like that. And you should make sure to admonish those people as hard as possible. Hey everyone, if you liked that video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And don't forget to follow my Twitch, Instagram, Twitter, Discord, and TikTok. All links are in the description. Also, check out my Patreon if you'd like to support me even more than you already do. Thank you so much, everyone. I love you all.